Pennsylvania State Treasurer Stacy Garrity is on the job every day at the state capitol in Harrisburg, looking to cut waste and fees and returning unclaimed property to its rightful owners, including military medals.
Garrity is also a retired U.S. Army Reserve colonel. She was dubbed the Angel of the Desert during her service at Camp Bucca in southern Iran. 2822 News reporter Madonna Mantione has our story.
On January 19, 2021, Bradford County native Stacy Garrity was sworn in as the 78th Treasurer of the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania.
It was the first time that an incumbent had been unseated in a statewide since 1988. And the first time that we had a state treasurer from a rural county in over 40 years. So I thank God for the opportunity, and I really appreciate the Pennsylvanians that put their faith in me.
Her story begins in Bradford County, a graduate of Sarah High School, and then earning a degree in finance and economics from Bloomsburg University.
I was the first person in my family to go to college, and it was there that I joined ROTC, and from there, the rest is history. Spent 30 years in the Army Reserves.
That led to a career as a cost accountant at Global Tungsten and Powders Corporation in Towanda, becoming one of the first 2 female vice presidents at the company.
I was vice president of government affairs and industry liaison.
While she is proud of her accomplishments, she is very honored to have served our country in the Army Reserve. She was part of 3 deployments to Iraq.
I was commissioned in May of 1986, so I had 3 deployments all to the Middle East. So Desert Storm in 1991, Operation Iraqi Freedom in 2003, and Operation Enduring Freedom in 2009. In 08-09 at Camp Bucca, which is in southern Iraq, we had 7,000 detainees, and I had 1,200 soldiers under my command, and we were the very first internment facility to have 0 escape attempts and 0 abuse allegations.
While serving in Iraq, she earned the nickname the Angel of the Desert. Garrity explains how that distinction came about.
So I got a call from NPR. They had ran into a detainee, and I don't even know who the detainee was, but he had said that I saved his life. A lot of these detainees did not even have basic education, so we taught English, math, and and tried to give them some skills so that then when they did leave the camp that they were able to provide for their families.
Her service earned her the Bronze Star, twice for exceptional service, and the Legion of Merit before retiring from the Army Reserve with the rank of colonel. Now a state treasurer, she is the fiscal watchdog for the state. One of her top priorities is returning unclaimed property. That includes the hundreds of military medals that are kept in the Treasury's vault for veterans or their loved ones.
Because I'm a veteran, returning these to the veteran or the family is very near and dear to my heart, because it's a way to show that we honor their sacrifice that they made on behalf of all of us. And so far since taking office, I've given back 385 medals and memorabilia, and that includes 6 Purple Hearts and 3 Bronze Stars.
Garrity is also proud of the fight she took on for veterans at the Wilkes-Barre VA Medical Center, opening it up again to visitors 3 years after the pandemic.
So our heroes, who should have been enjoying their golden years with dignity and respect, were instead basically being held in a bureaucratic form of solitary confinement.
Garrity loves her role as state treasurer and, of course, being a veteran.
I am not a politician. I am just a normal person from Bradford County, one of the most rural counties, and then what I want to do is fight for everyday people. Now, I will mention, if I hadn't hit my mandatory retirement date in 2016, I would still be serving. I would not be sitting here as your state treasurer, because serving was and is the honor of my lifetime.
For Veterans Voices honoring those who serve, I'm Madonna Mantione.
This year, the Treasury Department returned a record amount of unclaimed property.
If you are a veteran or a loved one looking to reclaim medals, we have much more information for you on pahomepage.com. A local man was
I was born and raised in Bradford County, which is one of the more rural counties in the Commonwealth, and graduated from Sarah High School and then went on to go to college at Bloomsburg University. So first person in my family to go to college, and it was there that I joined ROTC, and from there the rest is history. Spent 30 years in the Army Reserves.
You said you went to Bloomsburg. What did you major in? What was your degree?
Yeah, so I majored in finance with a minor in economics.
Excellent. So you became one of the first women vice presidents of Global Tungsten and Powders. Tell us about that accomplishment.
Sure. So I spent 30 years working at Global Tungsten and Powders, which is in Towanda, Pennsylvania, and it is the largest tungsten smelter in the Western world. So I started off as a cost accountant and really never planned to be there for over 3 decades, but that's how it worked out. So I worked my way up to become one of 2 female vice presidents. So I ran 2 out of 3 of our business units for a while, and then my last assignment, I was Vice President of Government Affairs and Industry Liaison. And what I did in that role is push legislation to help the U.S. industrial base. So one thing that I'm particularly proud of is something that we got passed in the National Defense Authorization Act. I call it "Don't Buy from the Bad Guys." So for many, many years, Department of Defense put tungsten from China into our DoD munitions. And so we tried forever to say, buy America, and it didn't really resonate. But what did work was when we said, okay, buy from anybody except China, Russia, North Korea, Iran. And so it was a little complicated, so I used to explain it to people by I called it "Don't buy from the bad guys." And so they still call it "Don't buy from the bad guys" today.
Oh, wow. So before that, though, you were in the military. Can you tell us about your military service? You mentioned that you went right after high school.
Right. So I joined ROTC. Actually, it was my sophomore year in college. And the ROTC was a partnership with Bucknell University. So because I joined so late, I had to actually go to basic training at Fort Knox. So that was quite interesting. But I was commissioned in May of 1986. So I had 3 deployments all to the Middle East. So Desert Storm in 1991, Operation Iraqi Freedom in 2003, and Operation Enduring Freedom in 2009.
So you were deployed 3 times?
Yes, 3 times. And all 3 times our mission was detention operations, which most soldiers hate detention operations because it's almost like Groundhog Day.
Tell me how long each deployment was.
Okay, so Desert Storm, that was roughly 6 months. My deployment in 03-04 was about 14 months, and then the last deployment in 08-09 was 12 months. And that deployment, I was the acting battalion commander at Camp Bucca, which is in southern Iraq. We had 7,000 detainees, and I had 1,200 soldiers under my command. And we were the very first internment facility to have 0 escape attempts and 0 abuse allegations.
Explain what it's like to be in the Army Reserves and what, being a part of it and just what it's like.
So it's almost like having a whole second career because I spent, about 2 or 3 weekends a month, about 70 days a year. So I was basically between the private sector, Global Tungsten and Powders, and the Army Reserves. I was never ever home. And so when I hit my mandatory retirement date in 2016, it was great for a while. In fact, funny story, my second weekend home, my husband looked at me and said, "Don't you have somewhere you have to be?" And I said, "No, isn't this great?" So it was great for a while, but after a while I felt the call to serve again.
Was it difficult being a part of the reserves? I mean, you said that you were so busy, so, did you find that to be challenging?
Well, sure, it was challenging. A lot of times, I was in a different country with my private sector job, and we had calls multiple nights of the week. So the running joke would be, what time zone was I in? I would do calls from India, from all countries in Europe, from Asia, from China, Japan, Hong Kong, you name it. So it was interesting. Now, I will mention, if I hadn't hit my mandatory retirement date in 2016, I would still be serving. I would not be sitting here as your state treasurer because serving was and is the honor of my lifetime.
What did you do during your deployments?
So my deployments, we were detention operations, and so that means we ran internment facilities. So we would have basically the bad guys, and so our mission was to provide care and custody with dignity and respect. So my last deployment, like I mentioned, we had 7,000 detainees. They were largely green, which meant that hopefully they would transition back. If you're a green detainee, that would mean that eventually the goal would be for you to transition back to your home at some point. But we also had death row. And they were about 220 detainees that had been sentenced to death by the Iraqi criminal court, so very bad jihadists. And it was interesting because we had to build a special area for them, obviously. And when they came, I was told, these detainees are never, ever, ever going to talk to you because you're female and you're the infidel. And I said, that's fantastic. I hope they never talk to me. But I'll tell you what, I guarantee you that within 24 hours they're going to ask to speak to me. And it was probably 8 hours.
Wow. You said that you hit your mandatory retirement date. So my next question was, do you miss it? I assume that's a yes, you do miss serving. Can you talk about that?
Well, it's just interesting because you talk about going from, 3 weekends a month typically, calls 4 nights a week, 70 different days, and you go, and you hit your mandatory retirement date and then it's stop. And so it was a bit of a transition. I thought there would be a big hole in my heart. It was actually okay. Of course, I miss my soldiers. I think first they were kind of happy when I hit my mandatory retirement date because I really held them accountable. And then in a few months, my senior civilian called me and said, "We really miss you. There's nobody to make sure that that we're accountable and that we're meeting all of the standards." So I still keep in contact with them. If I had the opportunity to serve again, of course I would. But there's many, many different ways to serve.
Right, like a state treasurer.
Exactly.
So how did you earn the nickname Angel of the Desert?
Oh my goodness. So I got a call from NPR, and actually they couldn't find me. So they found my mother, who lived in Old Forge, Pennsylvania. And she said, "You really have to call these folks." So they wanted to do an interview, and they had ran into a detainee, and I don't even know who the detainee was, but he had said that I saved his life. And so they wanted to get us together on the phone. It didn't work out, so they ended up just coming and doing an interview and basically talking about our efforts we adopted an orphanage, just about things that we did to make sure that the camp was secure and safe. So for example, you don't want detainees to sit around all day thinking about ways how they can harm your soldiers. So I gave them things to do. So I would have the interpreters bring newspapers, like a week old from Kuwait when they came in. We would do soccer games. We would do a movie night. Now these were all preconditioned on the idea if they did one thing to hurt a soldier, life as they knew it was over. So as long as they were well behaved, we had these activities, and so I think that's one of the reasons that we had 0 escape attempts is because, we kept people busy. We also had Islamic discussion, and so that was to help the Shias and the Sunnis be able to live together in harmony. A lot of these detainees did not even have basic education, so they were doing the bad things that they were doing to try and feed their families. So we taught English, math, and and tried to give them some skills so that then when they did leave the camp that they were able to provide for their families.
And you were also a military police, right?
I was, MP.
Okay,
So,
what's the difference?
MP stands for military police.
Between MP and colonel, is there a difference in the title?
Okay, so colonel is a rank.
Okay.
So I got to the rank of colonel, 06. And then MP, that was basically my MOS. So you have a specialty when you're in the Army. So you could be in the medical field, you could be supply, you could be military intelligence, you could be infantry. So I happen to be military police.
So are people scared of you?
My husband thought they were. When he came to my change of command, so that's when you have a ceremony and the outgoing commander leaves, the incoming commander comes in. He said, "Why is everybody saluting you?" And he said, "Everybody seems very scared." I said, "Don't worry, when I was that young, I was also scared of my commander." But no, they laughed at my going away ceremony. I gave out so many coins, so many certificates, so many different awards that they said it was really not a ceremony for me, it was me having a ceremony for the soldiers.
That's awesome. Switching gears to your role as state treasurer, you have a lot of duties. One of your focuses is getting military medals back to veterans, to them or their loved ones. Can you tell us about that initiative? I can. So we get military medals, decorations, and memorabilia, usually from abandoned safe deposit boxes. And so, because I'm a veteran, returning these to the veteran or the family is very near and dear to my heart because it's a way to show that we honor their sacrifice that they made on behalf of all of us. And so far since taking office, I've given back 385 medals and memorabilia, and that includes 6 Purple Hearts and 3 Bronze Stars.
So it does take a fair amount of detective work. So a lot of times, because these safe deposit boxes are abandoned, that means they've been dormant for 3 years. So we have to locate, who the medals belong to. A lot of times the veterans passed away. And so we'll find the family member, we offer to have a ceremony, and we always send a proclamation with the medals. But I'll tell you one interesting return. So one was we returned medals to the church family of Timothy Marahoris. So he was a Korean War veteran, and when he passed away at the age of 80, the people in the vault started looking for his family. So he came over with his parents who immigrated from Greece when he was just a toddler. And so we could find no living relatives in the United States because he'd never been married, didn't have children, and couldn't find any living relatives in Greece. But what we did find was his church, and that was right over here in Camp Hill, the Greek Trinity Orthodox Church. And so we had a little ceremony with Father Michael, and so we gave the medals to the church to display in his honor.
I know that some unclaimed property is auctioned. Do you ever auction off medals?
No, we will never auction off a military medal.
Or the decorations?
No, nothing. Yeah, right. We will keep those forever until we find, the veteran or their family to return it to.
You mentioned it takes a lot of detective work, but how do you start the process of returning these medals?
So if we know first we have to locate the owner of the safe deposit box. And then once we locate them, we will look to see, we'll call them and try to, locate who the military medal belonged to. So I'll give you one story. So we returned a Bronze Star to the family of a World War II veteran, Frank Musto, and he was in Westmoreland County. And so he was in World War II, he was wounded both in Italy and in France, so he had a Purple Heart, he had numerous decorations, but his one son who had passed away had his Bronze Star in a safe deposit box. So Treasury received it, we located the family, they thought this Bronze Star was lost forever. So we had a little ceremony at the VFW in Lower Burl, and many generations of Frank's family came. They brought a shadow box with his old World War II uniform. All of the decorations were in the shadow box except for that Bronze Star. So we had a very nice ceremony, and the family was so delighted that they later came here to Harrisburg, and I gave them a tour of the vault.
So just to clarify, Frank Musto had passed away, which is why it went to his sons, correct?
Yes, one son had his Purple Heart, the other son had his Bronze Star.
Gotcha. Why is it so important to you to return these medals and these memorabilia?
Well, because I'm a veteran, and I think every item that the soldier chose to keep or the family member chose to keep, whether it be a medal, whether it be dog tags, whether it be their rank, it was precious to them. And so every piece is a symbol of somebody's story. And these brave men and women are heroes. They were willing to pay the ultimate sacrifice so that we can enjoy the freedoms that we enjoy. And so when I ran, I said I would do, everything that I could to always support our veterans. And that's what I've done.
Is there anything you want people to know about you, or would you like people to remember?
Well, sure. Hopefully they won't have to be worrying about that for a long time. But I am not a politician. I am just a normal person from Bradford County, one of the most rural counties in the Commonwealth. First person in my family to go to college, went to a state university, joined the military, served our country. I am just a normal person, and what I want to do is fight for everyday people. So in addition to returning military medals, I did take on a situation at the Wilkes-Barre VA Medical Center. And so last summer, in August of 2022, I was approached at a picnic where some folks told me that these veterans had basically been locked down for 3 consecutive years. And I said, that can't be true because things are opening up. So our heroes, who should have been enjoying their golden years with dignity and respect, were instead basically being held in a bureaucratic form of solitary confinement. So wrote a letter to President Biden, to Secretary McDonough, the VA secretary, wrote a letter to the Wilkes-Barre VA, really did not get any satisfactory responses except that they were basically under the old COVID restrictions. So went to DC, met with Congressman Cartwright, worked with Dan Muser, and basically we took on the fight of opening things up for these veterans who were basically being institutionalized. So we had an in-person meeting on August 23rd of this year, and since then they have welcomed back all volunteers with the same standards as family and friends. They have many, many activities, both inside and outside, with outside organizations. They resume their therapeutic outings for the unit that has substance abuse issues. And they also, and this was very important, they resume their therapy sessions that they had stopped for basically 4 years for Vietnam veterans who have PTSD.
I was going to say a lot of those folks struggle with mental health, and PTSD, correct?
They do, and so since they had stopped the therapy sessions, there were 3 suicides in this Vietnam veterans group. So they have resumed those therapy sessions. I've talked to the Vietnam vets, they're very happy. I've talked to workers, I've talked to friends, I've talked to volunteers, and things are really getting back to normal. So it's just good news, because that's what our veterans deserve.
I guess I should just ask, why did you decide to run for state treasurer?
Well, funny. So after I had hit my mandatory retirement date, it was great for a while, but I felt called to serve again. And so there was a special election for a congressional seat. So I called my state rep, Tina Pickett, and said, hey, if I'm thinking about doing something in the field of politics at a later date, should I jump into this race just so that I can meet our leaders around the district? And she said, absolutely, that's a great idea. So there were 31 folks that were running for this special election. And so my goal was to be able to do my 5-minute speech, my 3-minute, make it through a couple of rounds. And I finished in the top 20% of 31 candidates. So I was delighted. It was a wonderful experience. But then I figured, okay, I'll wait to see what transpires. So when the state treasurer seat opened up, I was approached by people that remember that I ran for the special election. And first I said, I absolutely am not going to run in a statewide. You guys know I'm from Bradford County. I've never officially ran for anything before. And I can't self-fund, and I'm not a politician. But they really didn't find anybody. I prayed about it. I thought, if not me, then who's going to do it? God opened up the door, so I jumped in, and it was the first time that an incumbent had been unseated in a statewide since 1988. And the first time that we had a state treasurer from a rural county in over 40 years. So I thank God for the opportunity, and I really appreciate the Pennsylvanians that put their faith in me. Right now I am focused on winning again in 2024, and then we'll think about it. But honestly, my only ambition is to serve. And I want to be that fiscal watchdog for our hardworking Pennsylvanians and make sure that I'm taking care of taxpayer dollars. I will always be an advocate for veterans.